The impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte have become a defining moment in Philippine politics. On December 2, 2024, civil society activists filed the first of two impeachment complaints, accusing Duterte of violating the Constitution, betraying public trust, and committing high crimes. These allegations include issuing death threats against President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., his wife, and House Speaker Martin Romualdez, claims that have sent shockwaves through the political landscape. Just 2 days later, a second complaint was lodged by activists led by the Bagong Alyansang Makabayan, or Bayan. This time, the focus was on the alleged misuse of over 612 million pesos in confidential funds allocated to Duterte's offices as Vice President and Education Secretary. Critics claim the funds lacked proper accounting and transparency, raising questions about how these public resources were utilized. To understand the gravity of these events, we need to unpack the context. The complaints aren't just about financial accountability or alleged threats. They reflect deeper tensions within the administration and the country's political system. For years, Sara Duterte has been a polarizing figure. Her tenure as Davao City Mayor, before she became vice president, was marked by allegations of extrajudicial killings linked to the infamous Davao Death Squad. While her supporters credit her for maintaining order, her critics see these accusations as evidence of a troubling pattern of governance. As vice president, Duterte also assumed the role of Education Secretary, a position that gave her significant influence. With influence, however, came scrutiny, particularly over her office's use of confidential funds. Allegations that these resources were spent without proper justification have intensified calls for transparency and accountability. But why has this political crisis erupted now? To answer that, we need to revisit the 2022 elections. Sara Duterte's alliance with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was a turning point in Philippine politics. Known as the UniTeam, their partnership brought together two of the country's most powerful political dynasties. This coalition won by a landslide, with Duterte leveraging her popularity in Mindanao and the Visayas and Marcos consolidating his base in Luzon. The alliance, however, was seen by many as a marriage of convenience, one that prioritized political strategy over shared vision. This alliance now shows visible cracks. Reports of tension between Duterte and Marcos emerged as their administration faced challenges. While Marcos has largely dismissed the impeachment as a distraction, critics suggest that this crisis could deepen the divide within their coalition. What's fascinating is that despite the impeachment complaints, Sara Duterte retains significant support, particularly in her home regions of Mindanao and the Visayas. For many in these areas, Duterte represents strong, decisive leadership, a quality they feel resonates with their values. Her tenure as mayor of Davao City left a lasting impression, and her political base remains deeply loyal. Even allegations of corruption and misuse of funds are viewed by some as politically motivated attacks rather than genuine accountability measures. This support is evident in recent surveys. While Duterte's approval rating has dropped to 60%, down from 69% earlier this year, she still ranks as one of the top contenders for the 2028 presidential elections. Her connection to the Duterte brand, a legacy built by her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte, remains a powerful force in Philippine politics. For President Marcos, this saga presents a dilemma. As the head of state, he must navigate a delicate balance between maintaining unity within his coalition and addressing public demands for accountability. Marcos has described the impeachment efforts as a storm in a teacup, cautioning that such proceedings could distract Congress from pressing national issues. However, political observers argue that downplaying these allegations could further erode public trust in his leadership. The impeachment process itself is complex. It begins in the House of Representatives, where 1/3 of its members must vote in favor of the complaints for them to proceed to the Senate. There, a 2/3 vote is required to convict. If convicted, Duterte would not only lose her position, but also be barred from holding public office, a significant blow to her 2028 presidential ambitions. This crisis has broader implications for Philippine politics. At its core, it raises questions about the accountability of public officials and the role of political dynasties in governance. For decades, Philippine politics has been dominated by a few powerful families, creating a system where loyalty often trumps merit. The impeachment complaints against Duterte challenge this status quo, forcing the country to confront difficult questions about leadership and governance. For voters, the stakes couldn't be higher. The choices made in the coming months will shape the nation's political landscape, not just for 2028, but for years to come. Will the impeachment complaints lead to meaningful reforms, or will they deepen the divisions within an already polarized system? The answer lies in how the nation's leaders respond to this moment of crisis. What's clear is that the story of Sara Duterte's impeachment is about more than just one individual. It's about the future of Philippine democracy. It's a test of whether the country can hold its leaders accountable while navigating the complex realities of political alliances, public perception, and the enduring influence of dynastic politics. As this saga unfolds, one thing is certain: the eyes of the nation and the world are watching closely. What happens next will define not only Sara Duterte's political career, but also the trajectory of Philippine governance in the years to come. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this valuable, please show your appreciation by giving a thumbs up and subscribing to OHA News Asia, your trusted source for knowledge always at your fingertips.